I remember being like, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I was like, so why would God do this to you if he loves you? Like, and I remember like just the way that cut, like, I just felt like it cut like and that is when you started crying.
Yeah. I think I like started sobbing at that point. I was like, yeah, I don't know.
Because it was like the question, I think that was maybe deep within you that you didn't want to, bring to conscious awareness, because then it's like, this is the paradigm, the foundation of how I view the world. And I think, being in the spirituality space and all of these conversations, religion versus spirituality, we have so much more in common than we do not.
Yeah.
And how a lot of these conversations in spirituality and or religion and the crossover are so triggering for people, or you can expand this out into anything, politics, food, like whatever. They're so triggering for people. But to me, it's like we have to look at those questions. Otherwise, we don't really know what we believe in. And I think at the core of a lot of people's trust issues and struggles internally and what they're looking for, and when I look at people's relationship issues, problems with money, like this is it was really powerful for me, because going through that with you and asking that question and realizing that with you, moving forward in my work with clients, I will tell you to this day, it is something that now I'm able to recognize, and it comes up so often. Like I will, because now I can see it and I'll bring it back to you. And so let's talk about how you feel about God right now. Yeah. And that's the thing people don't want to talk about. Well, here we are again.
Hello.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm kind of recording a bunch of these out of order as we relaunch the podcast, but I wanted you to be the first interview.
Hell yeah.
Because, I was saying this on the other show, but this will come out first. Like, so much of why I started podcasting was like to have these deeper conversations with people and to kind of like show the behind the scenes. And like, for me, it's about people's journeys. Like, that's what I love talking about. That's what I love learning about people. I love witnessing people in the journey, like being a part of the journey. And the reason why we called it multidimensional is because obviously, like, multidimensional spiritually, but just who we are as beings and all the facets of us. And I think for me, it's like sentimental because you've been with me through so much change. I'm like literally going to cry. Like the last decade has been so crazy, and like you have been with me through the whole thing. And simultaneously, like you have gone through so much,
You're gonna make me cry.
I didn't think I was going to cry, but like, it's like, it feels like a full circle moment. It's like weird because I mean, I've been doing this for close to a decade, and like here we are doing like really rebirthing it, and it's like the same podcast but totally different. And like here I am with you, and like I think about where we are right now and like where we were when we met, and like just all of the shit we've been through together, and even before meeting each other, and why we connected. And when we first met, we were just talking about, you were my intern for Straight Up Paleo, like that other podcast,
like lifetimes ago.
Yeah, that was such a fun podcast.
So fun.
And it's so funny because I'm like, was one of the whole points of starting that show just so that we could meet, and we ended up just becoming besties. And, for me, kind of watching you go through your whole journey, and I was doing this, whatever my iteration of this was, and here we are sitting here, and like you just completely blown up, and like you like created this whole like career and life for yourself that I don't think even at that time you had on your radar,
Definitely not. Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah. And I think you're one of the most interesting people to me. And I think that a lot of people don't get to see all of those facets of you. Like they really don't. And we have that kind of similar, I was talking about this with Michael, like how I present. I know that it's not always, how people perceive me is not always like how I perceive myself. And I think that with you too, like, because I like know you so intimately, and then I think that's just very different than other people who maybe meet you for the first time. And I also think, and we can talk about this, but as you grow a platform, there's that whole other layer of it too. Like so many people seeing you, but like not really seeing you, because that's just one part of your personality. It's just one thing you're doing,
yeah.
And then all of which we'll probably get into, like even backlash when you start to share the rest of yourself, or like people saying like, stick to this, and I think you know, that's so fascinating, but I think there's so much about you like that people don't know. And I don't even remember the first time you came on the show. Like I maybe was 22.
Yeah, I think we were like young 20s.
Yeah.
So we just talked about eating food, like paleo and stuff.
Yeah.
Like when we've obviously gone through so much together, seeing each other develop, like you said, in like very intimate ways of just like knowing like a true friendship. So I think I'm very honored to be on this show. I'm very honored to be in your life, that you're in my life. Like we were one of the best friendships I've had in my lifetime. So it's very cool to see each other grow and our businesses grow and just like go through different phases of life. It's just, it's awesome.
I love it. I also love that I'm making you tear up because
I
never
don't cry. You can get literally Christina can get me to cry. Like, no, like the second you start crying, I'm like, fuck. I know. I'm like, God damn it.
It's always when I cry.
I know.
But I think that's good for people to see, you know, because
Yeah.
like you definitely, and I have this side of me too, but I think because of the spiritual side, now people see some of the more softer bits of me. Like we can present as like, I'm a tough bitch, you know, like, like don't come at me. But that's not your whole personality at all. And so I want to kind of approach this like you've never been on the show before, you know, and you are a professional chef now. But I want to go back to how you came to be that. Like, I want to talk about the journey.
Let's do it.
And I want to go all the way back to, like, let's start your high school volleyball player.
Yeah. So, starting in high school volleyball, I guess my life was basically volleyball. Yeah. So I wasn't into cooking. I wasn't into other things. I played on, like, the #1 volleyball team in the nation, club level. That was my life. For some reason, like, middle school, I was just like, I'm going to play volleyball. Like that's going to be what I do. I don't even know why. I was just like, I'm going to play college volleyball. I'm going to be a pro athlete. That's just what I wanted to do. And that's probably because I was super tall and like was awkward. Like I was the tallest girl in my grade for like literally all of elementary and
was that
middle
hard?
school. Yeah. I'm not by the tallest girl. I was like the tallest person.
Yeah.
So like I was so awkward. I was gangly. Like the boys were awkward around me because I was bigger than the boys. So I was like, I guess I'll just put it to use. I'm just going to be a good volleyball player.
Yeah.
And that's what I ended up doing. I went into high school. It was my life. Like I didn't care about academics that much. I didn't care about social life. I played volleyball every single day of my high school. Like I maybe rest like once every other week, but like even days I didn't have practice, I was practicing at my house. My dad built a volleyball court in our backyard. Like it was crazy. And
shout out to
shout out to John Scott. Thank you. Couldn't have done it without you. But I loved it too. Like it was so fun. I was so competitive and it felt good because it was something I was really good at.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really like great at other things. Like I was good at school, but not amazing at school. I was really awkward socially. I was extreme introvert and shy. So it was also a way to make friends. Like my best friends were on my volleyball team. And it was really hard for me to make friends otherwise just because I was like shy and awkward. So it like really was my identity. And
why do you think you were shy? Like, do you think it's just like who you are, or was it that was it because you felt insecure because you were so much taller than everybody else? Was that
I think that was a factor.
Yeah.
I think I'm an introvert by nature, but I wouldn't consider myself shy anymore.
Yeah.
But it definitely was insecurities. I was like tall, like kind of made fun of for being like so tall and gangly and just like kind of very shy. And also I was like mostly an introvert growing up. So my parents were always like, you need to like put yourself out there more. Like don't be so attached to us and like all this stuff. And I was just like uncomfortable with that without being able to socialize over something. If I was like socializing over like an activity, super good at that. But if I was just like a room full of people, that was super uncomfortable for me. And I mostly think it was because I was insecure about being like different from everyone else.
Yeah. Well, especially when it's like, I mean, I would imagine, you know, you're like always hyper aware of everybody's gonna look at me because I'm the tallest one.
Yes.
Like it's unmissable, you know.
Yes.
Like people are gonna notice me, and so sometimes we balance that out with like I'm just not gonna talk because like I'm already taking up a lot of space, or like you know. So I would imagine that would be
100%. Yeah, I was always felt like I was standing out and being stared at and different. So I think I just turned inward, or again I turned to volleyball because I was really good at it and I was recognized for it. And that kind of like became my identity in high school and then into college when I ended up playing college volleyball.
Yeah, it's funny because like while you're talking, I'm not that I didn't know this about you, but I think I'm just kind of realizing it in a different way when you're talking about that. I'm like, the thing about you is, because I will watch you go through discomfort and you do not process discomfort the way I do. Like when I'm uncomfortable, I'm like energy vomiting on my friends. You know, I'm like emotional and I'm expressing and I'm going back and forth. You know, I'm like doing that whole process. And Kelly just sits there and is like, okay, yeah. She just listens to me, right? And like when you're going through something, you like just internalize. Like you're just so internal and you don't say anything. And it'll usually be more like if I'm involved, like I'm talking to you. And you're just like not saying anything and you're like processing. You know, you're just like and you like twist it all up and alchemize it all in you, and then you'll be like, okay, I've decided to do this. It's like, do you know what I'm saying? It's like it's a very interesting process of like, I'm so like, let's talk about it and you know, work through the pros and the cons and how am I feeling, and it's through me talking about it that I get to my own conclusions. I think my close friends know I just need to talk about it and I get there. I just want to know your opinion so that I can say no, I like my opinion better.
Yeah, like you always end up going with whatever you knew in your gut, but you needed someone to be able to bounce it off of. Yeah. Whereas, I'm very much like, no, I just know. Yeah. Or like I will internalize process things, which also comes to a fault sometimes because sometimes you need to let things out too. Yeah. And I'm better at that as an adult now. Yeah. But it's funny seeing the differences there because you'll be able to like bounce ideas off of. And the same for me though, I just like internalize and that could be the human design projector in me.
Well, that's what I'm like. Well, I'm a split definition. Like I need to talk to people, but I'm like thinking about it also from this context, like nature and nurture, you know, and how you just described that of like I'm really tall and I feel awkward, and I think we don't necessarily, you know, give those emotions we're feeling when we're younger enough like space. Like as a kid, like that is like when we have things that we're insecure about, you know, whether it's like the height or the skin or like, you know what I mean? Like all those things, it's that the way that impacts, you know, your whole internal world is really profound, where it's like, you know, maybe as an adult experiencing those same things is not that big of a deal, you know?
Definitely. Yeah.
But when you're saying like, you know, I'm feeling insecure about being this tall, I'm like taller than everybody in my class. And so I figured might as well just do something useful with it. Like that's actually how you tend to approach most things in your life now.
Literally everything.
And I like wonder how much of it is because of that. It's like, you know, you're in a position where it's like, I mean, there's something you can do to change that. Right? Yeah. It's like, I literally can't change my height. So I'm, you know, instead of feeling upset about it, like, what can I do to make it work? And I think that sometimes, you know, some problems can come with that in terms of you're not processing your emotions. But I also think that is a really like effective way of navigating certain things, because it's like at its core, it is, I'm accepting this and what can I do to like move forward, you know? And like, that's the thing that one of the things I really respect the most about you. Like I watch you and, you know, I know it takes a lot for you, despite how close we are, to say like, hey, I need to talk to you about something. Like, I know you hate doing that. And whenever you do, you know, I'll share my opinion and you just like listen, you know, you don't really like talk. You don't say much. You're very different than me. And then you like go home and the next day I'll be like, yeah, so I decided I'm starting this. I call this person. I set up this. Like you like have the whole plan. I'm like, wow, like really, really, you know, you're just like, let's go, let's move forward. And I think that that's such a powerful quality to have, you know, of like actually adding forward momentum in your life. And, you know, I think that'll kind of keep continuing to pop up in the story, but I'm just kind of putting that together.
No, 100%. And I've put that together through years of therapy too, because like you said, there are pros and cons to it. It's led to negative things in my life as well. Just dealing with situations of me not being able to handle emotions. So being a doer instead and putting things into action versus feeling, which is pretty much a coping mechanism when you don't know how to deal with all your emotions. So like it's good and bad. Like I'm definitely a doer and like I will get shit done. Like if you need something done, like I'm the person to go to, but also bad because then I just go and don't rest, which I'm doing much better with now in present day versus like past Kelly.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so you're playing volleyball and then what?
So I am playing volleyball. I graduate from high school. I go on to play D1 college volleyball, which again, that was my whole dream ever since I was in middle school. I was like, I'm going to be a college athlete. I'm a starter my sophomore year. Everything is going right. Like I'm doing everything right on paper. Like I am an amazing student athlete. I'm getting like good grades. I am becoming one of the best players on my team. And then it was Halloween of 2014. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I got hit in the head with a ball and basically got a really bad concussion. And me being me, I was like, fuck it, I'm going to play through this. I literally knew I had a concussion. I've had a concussion before. I've had multiple concussions prior. And I knew I had a concussion, but I was a starter. This was the most important game of our season at the time. I also was kind of peer pressured by my coaches and trainers to play. And so I decided to play. I played 2 more games. My head was really fucked. And by the second game at the end, I was like, okay, I have a concussion. Did all the tests, had a concussion, and expected to kind of be better within 2 weeks. Unfortunately, that did not happen.
Is that what they told you? Like they said?
They didn't say, but in my past concussions prior, I was better within a few weeks.
Okay.
So I was like, oh, just going to be like the last concussions. I'm going to be fine. You rest for a few weeks and then you come back and you're fine. But a few weeks came back, like went on, still wasn't fine. Weeks turns into months. My volleyball season was over. So at that point I was like, well, whatever, my season's over, but I wanted to be better for the spring. Months turned into many, many months and many doctor's appointments, not figuring out why I was not getting better. It was worse than my past concussions where like my eyesight was really bad. My walking and like balance was really bad. I had migraines every night, so I couldn't sleep. My vision, I had like this weird thing where I couldn't track stuff well with my vision. So usually with brain injuries, if you're like tracking, you can even do like a simple eye test. My eyes would like flicker uncontrollably just to get from point A to B. So there was a lot of things going on like that where doctors were like, yeah, we don't know why you're not getting better. Like you should be better by now. And it was like, it turned into like years of this basically. By the year mark of the injury, I still was basically as bad as I was the day I got the injury.
Wow. Yeah.
And that was after many doctor's appointments from all over. I went to like brain boot camp where like I was in this boot camp for like a week, and it was like a horrible experience. It helped because it helped me get to the root of things that were going on, but it was so painful where I would like after the boot camp go home and like throw up because like they put you through so much.
Is it like is it physical or is it mental?
Both,
okay.
But it's mostly physical. So it was for this center was in Georgia. It was for people who had suffered like severe trauma. So like there were other people in there who like were in wheelchairs, for example. And luckily I was not that bad. But they would do things like they would do tests where they like do medical tests on you. The worst of it was they had this machine that was like, have you seen that NASA machine where they spin you upside down?
Yeah,
around?
That's what I was imagining when you were saying that.
They had that and you would do stuff like that. And after that machine,
safe for when you're,
well, they're like doctors and stuff. So
well, I guess, but that reminds me of like, you know, when they in movies and stuff portray like when people have mental health issues back in the day and they would like, it's like a lobotomy. Like, let's just shake up the brain.
That's what it felt like. Cause like,
like
I guess like it deals with your center of gravity.
Okay.
And a lot of problems with brain injuries is your center of gravity is like fucked.
I mean, look, I'm just saying I wouldn't like that even like without a brain injury. So I can't imagine.
Yeah. So like
that.
after days like that, I would just go back and we had to go to a hotel because I wasn't living in Georgia at the time. And I would like throw up and like just like cry all day because it was so rough. But after that week, they kind of got some answers they were like, you need to get some like blood tests with like, we think something's wrong with your thyroid. Because I did a bunch of tests where like I wasn't recovering well from like laying down in position to sitting up. I would like whatever the blood pressure would like drop a ton, and they're like, that's not normal. So that's when I found out I had like some other health things going on. But after that and like going to brain doctors weekly, I'd go to brain doctors weekly where they would put like electrodes on my head and they would just run a bunch of tests and you have to do eye tracking and all that. So like after like maybe a year and 8 months, I finally was like, I'm done. Like I can't do this. It's not worth it going back on the volleyball court. I had PTSD. Anytime I walked into the gym, I had PTSD, which wasn't really dealt with because that wasn't talked about as much back then, especially like you don't think you have PTSD from getting hit in the head with a ball. Yeah. But it was also the whole thing of being like kind of encouraged to go play on the same court and being pushed by my coaches to do that, even though they knew I had an injury. So it was just too much for me. So I I finally was like, I quit. Like I had to ask my doctor to medically disqualify me too. So to get out of it, I can't just like quit the team because I would lose my scholarship. It was like a bunch of like bureaucratic stuff, like all the paperwork and stuff. You have to get approval from a doctor to finally get disqualified, and then was able to stop being on the team. But then I had to work on the team for the rest of the time there too. So that was a whole other thing too, because they knew I had PTSD. So I had to go work for other sports teams to earn my scholarship. But yeah, so that was a whole journey. And obviously my mental health at that point was horrible, because the one thing I was passionate about and the one thing I was super good at and like I was known for it, like that was my identity, was like ripped from me. And I couldn't do anything about it. I did everything I could. I went to obviously millions of doctor's appointments and therapy, and there was nothing that I could do to get better and get back on the court.
Well, I mean, having your identity, like, it's like, okay, you start with, I have this thing I'm insecure about and I'm putting it to use. And then I'm becoming the best of the best. And now this is my whole identity, which, you know, when you're an athlete, I mean, this is what happens, right? Your whole world is about it. You're spending every waking moment thinking about, everything revolves around that, you know? But there's also like, so that in itself is a lot, but then there's also the component of I mean, how old are you? Like 19, 20?
I was 20. Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, you know, we're impressionable. We're still, you know, and it's your identity, but it's also like such an emotional and scary experience to be going through that. I mean, like, I haven't been through that. Like, I can only relate. I think about how I felt when I had Lyme, when I would like lose my vision and like be unable to walk, and like when my brain stopped working, like those bouts, like that was so, I can't even describe how like scary and demoralizing, and feeling like I'm so young and like my brain isn't working. I can't think straight. I can't read a sentence in front of me. Like, I felt like, is this how old people feel? You know, like, is this how my grandma felt? Like when right before she, you know, it's very scary, and it really fucks with your head. Like, that fucked with my head, you know? So like, I'm curious just how else that felt for you during that process. Like, you're going through all these tests, and you're trying to go to all these doctors, and you're not getting help. Like, even beyond the identity with, you know, being an athlete, there's just, to me, a personal, like, as a human, like, I'm losing my function.
Yeah, that's exactly how it felt. Like, spot on. I felt like my body was betraying me. Yeah. And that I couldn't trust it. And again, it's like you said, it's very different from like any other injury, like a knee injury or something like that. Cause like, that's like, oh, you can fix this, and it's not affecting other parts of your life, but your brain affects everything. So I felt like a complete betrayal, a complete lack of trust, and a complete like despair, just because I was like, I can't even like function. I can't even like read a book without my eyes doing like double vision or anything like that, or look at screens without getting a migraine. So it just completely
your whole
fucks
function.
you.
That's your whole, like, that's like, that shows up just talking to somebody, you know, like following the conversation, like, let alone like reading, trying to watch something. Like, when you think about it, really, you know, I didn't realize that until that stuff started getting ripped from me, of like, this is my whole, like, without my brain functioning, like, I can't, you know, what am I doing? You know,
exactly.
That's hard. But, and so you say, you know, you felt like your body's betraying you. And I'm curious, like, is that also kind of how you felt? Or maybe not. Like, how did you feel toward the people, like your coaches? And
oh yeah, I mean, my coaches, I felt like Stockholm syndrome at first, because I was like, I knew logically in my head that like they were a part of this, but also they were such a big part of my life. Like, I trusted them, and they had so much power over me too, where at the time I like loved them because I was like, you know, star on the court, and they were like hyping me up. And looking back, I was like, oh no, they were a part of the problem, because they didn't protect me. They didn't help me when I clearly needed help. And even afterwards, when I was suffering from PTSD, and they knew I was suffering from PTSD, my coach would play games where like he would have me shag balls as girls were doing hitting drills, and I would be like in the back, like almost crying, because I was so afraid of getting hit in the head again. So it was a very weird power structure too, because again, they had the power to like kind of rip away my scholarship. And that was like one of the reasons I wanted to be a volleyball player too, is like, you know, get a full ride and be able to kind of have that financial freedom. So it was definitely a weird a hard thing to navigate at the time, because again, those like people I really respected and liked, and they put me in that position as well where it probably made my brain injury worse by playing on a damaged, like a concussion.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of intense emotion under that. Like I would imagine. I mean, I know just from, I mean, I would never played at that level. Obviously I wasn't that good, but I know, like, you know, my life was volleyball until I was 18, like, and like just that culture and like how your relationships with your coach, it's like a family, and it is very, I mean, it's very close. They're your whole family. You know?
You see them every day for 3 hours a day.
Yeah.
So you're talking to them, especially as a setter. I was like always going into my office and chatting with my coach or watching videos with my coaches. And like, I was pretty like very close with my coaches always. So to go through that and have like complete lack of trust, and then kind of be put in a position where from them being loving and like obsessed with me, because, you know, I was a star and like the starting position, to, oh, now I'm like as good as like trash on the ground because like I'm useless to them, was like very hard too, because it kind of fed into the thoughts in my head that like, oh, I'm only useful or valuable when I am like the star and playing volleyball, and now I'm not worth anything anymore.
Like I have to, if I'm not performing, I'm not good enough. Like I need to have this very tangible, here's my value. And that's why you want to be around me.
Yeah, exactly. So definitely had a part in feeling like I had no value and was useless. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a lot to be going through, you know, at that age. And it's like you feel betrayed, and like you can't trust the people around you, these people who are basically like family, you know, all these authority figures who are supposed to be looking out for you, and you can't trust your body, you know, your body's betraying you. So I mean, how do you, like, what comes after that? Like, what do you do with that?
So after that, after I basically was disqualified, I developed an eating disorder because I had no control in my life. I was super depressed. I didn't have anything to spend my time doing. So it wasn't like I was a conscious choice of like, I'm gonna have an eating disorder. It was just like, I'm gonna take back some control, and developed orthorexia, which is basically an eating disorder that's like lesser known, but it is the obsession with being like perfectly healthy, which makes sense because I felt like I was so unhealthy and had no control of my body that I was like, I'm gonna control everything that goes into it and everything I do with it. And it helps me have a sense of like stabilization again, because I was like, nothing's going right. I'm going to become super hyper fixated on everything that happens around me, going into me. And it gave me kind of a sense of something to do again. So I've like talked about this in therapy so much because I had to like go through the PTSD and get over it. But it kind of was a coping mechanism for me, because if I didn't, like, I could have turned to like alcohol or drugs, you know, like, I don't know, or like fallen into a deep depression and like self-harmed. So in a way it like was helpful at the time, because even though it was harmful, it was something that helped me get through the huge loss of volleyball. Yeah.
I mean, well, you know, I mean, I quit drinking and traded that in for orthorexia is what I did. I did a swap. I did a straight swap with that, you know? So I was like, yeah, I've been like, you know, 7 years sober, but I'm like, but you know, I just traded in for that. So, but you know, it's a complicated eating disorder. And I think what's interesting is like, you know, how do we get down that path? And so I'm curious, there's that control piece. Was there a piece of you that was hoping that if you ate perfectly, it would heal you? Or
definitely.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, it definitely kind of started that way. Because I was like, something's going on internally. Like maybe it's something I'm eating that I'm not healing from. So it became really focused on clean eating, which turned into tracking everything I ate, tracking every single calorie, weighing my food. And then that's when the obsession started. That's when the orthorexia started. Because it did start as me trying to like just feel better, like physically feel better, because I felt so sick. And then it just turned into a snowball effect. As you're getting into it, it just keeps going and going.
Did you realize it was disordered like early on, or no?
Not early on, no.
Okay.
I thought, because especially back then, this was like 2014, it was kind of common to like, you know, count your macros and do that stuff. So I was just like, oh, I'm being super healthy. It wasn't until probably like 6 months in where I was like so afraid to eat like a cookie or like anything unhealthy that I was like, this is not great. And I knew that I was like not mentally doing okay. I was like, I know this is unhealthy, but now I'm like obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to stop now.
Did people around you notice it was unhealthy, or was it more like hidden?
It was, some people noticed. Did they say anything? No.
Okay. Yeah, that's usually
how it goes. It was pretty well hidden because again, I was eating. I was just working out.
Yeah, that's what's tricky about it.
That's what's tricky about orthorexia, because it just looks like, oh, you're eating healthy food. And I ate a lot of food. It was just all low calorie food and like under my output of calories.
Yeah, we're eating like a pound of broccoli. Like.
Exactly. Like I was just eating steamed vegetables and like egg whites.
Yeah.
So I was eating sick. I know. That's so gross.
And we're like, why are we bloated?
I know. Why are our stomachs messed up now?
I know.
So I was eating. I was just like rapidly losing weight too. Yeah. So I only had one person actually say something to me, and it was one of my teammates. And she expressed her concerns. It was kind of early on too. It was before I lost like a ton of weight. And she expressed her concerns, and she had a previous eating disorder too. So she you know when someone has an eating disorder and you've had an eating disorder. So she kind of like got on a call with me, because she had moved up at that point. It was an ex team member, but she kind of saw what was happening still. And she was like, I'm really worried for you. And I was like, no, I'm fine. Like, like it's nothing to worry about. Like, I'm totally okay. I was like, you're crazy. And like, kind of like gaslit her. And I was like, no,
she was right.
But she was completely right.
So where did the modeling come in?
So the modeling ironically came in like kind of as I was getting over the eating disorder.
Okay.
So it was actually a few years into the eating disorder. I was like, well, I'm skinny now, so why not model? I'm skinny and tall. I have nothing to do. I have all this extra time because I don't have volleyball. It came in like my junior, more sort of senior year of college. And I was like, well, I might as well just like model, because like I'm skinny and I have nothing to do.
Did someone say something to you, or like how did that start? Did you just send in pictures, or?
I just sent pictures to like a modeling agency in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, like we'd love to have you. And then it turned into me ended up going into New York after, because I was like, why not? What else am I gonna do? I'm like skinny. And
so how did you get through the orthorexia? Like what changed, or what was the moment you were like, this isn't gonna work, and what did you do differently?
Yeah, so it was my junior year, so it's probably 8 months or 10 months into the eating disorder. Not that far in. By that point, I had lost 50 pounds, and I didn't have 50 pounds to lose. I think I weighed 113 at my lowest, and I'm 6'1". So I recognized that it was not looking good. And I happened to have a nutrition class just because I needed it for science credit. And one day we talked about eating disorders in class, and I felt like everyone was looking at me, and they were not. But I was like, because I knew I had an eating disorder. So after the class, I went and like brought my teacher aside, and I was like, I need help. Like, do you know of anyone?
Wow, that's like really brave.
Yeah, like that's not like anyone told me to do it. I was just like, I know if it keeps going this way, it's gonna be really bad. So my teacher sent me to a nutritionist that she knew that specialized in eating disorders. And so I started seeing her about once a week, and she helped me kind of like start adding food in, because I was like even afraid to add like one egg into breakfast. So I was like, no, it's going to throw off the macros. And I was afraid not to count macros and stuff like that. And she also would do weigh-ins, and I kept losing weight. And one day she was like, I'm afraid to like let you walk out of this office. Like if you lose any more weight, like you're going to have a heart attack. And I was like, that would be embarrassing. So I was like, we got to stop that, because I can't die from an eating disorder. That would be so embarrassing. That's not even, I wasn't even like, I want to live. I was like, no, that would be so embarrassing. I can't do that. So that's when I was like, okay, I'll get a therapist. So I got a therapist and basically started doing therapy and going through all of that. And then I decided to get a trainer too, which I told the trainer, I was like, you need to be in charge of my weight. I'm getting rid of the scale. I can't see a scale. You need to have weigh-ins for me. You need to tell me what to do, or else I'm going to do like run miles every day. So he was a huge part of it too, because he made me only do like weights. And I was like, we're only doing weights. I would ask to do cardio. He'd be like, no, like you can't do cardio. So he knew what was going on too, and was in charge of like helping me also add in foods and like bulking me up as well, but in like a slower way, or wasn't like super triggering, because it wasn't like all at once. Because a lot of the problem with eating disorder therapies is they will put in so much like really dense calorie foods and really unhealthy foods, which would be super triggering with someone with orthorexia, because it would be going from eating like so clean to so like quote unquote unhealthy that it would probably like make it worse. So it was a very gradual, slow process, but basically me reaching out to get help.
Yeah. I mean, you're giving me lots of flashbacks.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, I feel like I'm listening to myself. Like it's like, and I remember I remember weigh-ins, you know, and it's like so triggering and
so triggering.
And then especially, I don't know if it was like this for you. Like for me, I also had it was like I had these digestive things going on, you know, and so I would try and add stuff in, and then I would get super ill. I would get like legitimately like sick. And I kept losing weight even when I was eating more, you know, and it's like everyone just, the way they like looked at me, I felt like just a moral failure, you know?
Yeah. No, I felt like that too. I felt like embarrassed to like go out and not wear baggy clothes, which is funny because I would still like work out and eat unhealthy because you're in that addiction. It's an addiction at the end of the day. But it was so embarrassing to like go out and be like, everyone's looking at me. And I know they are because, I mean, you definitely had the look, and I had the look too. Yeah. Like, you know, the face, you could just see like the eating disorder look of being malnourished and like everything sunken in. Yeah. So it was like really embarrassing too, even though you're in that addiction and can't get out of it. Yeah. You want to, but you're like, it's like ingrained in you at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, I mean, for me at least, like, I mean, I was so embarrassed to go out, like, and I could feel everybody looking at me and I knew what they were thinking. And, you know, people would, you know, from like me, send food over to my table and come up to me and say things. And so I mean, I had people throw food at me. Like, it was so fucked, you know?
It's so fucked.
It was complicated for me because I was like, I'm like legit sick, you know? Like, I was in and out of doctor's offices and getting all the testing done. And yeah, it's like the skinny shaming thing was like a whole other layer that I did not at the time know how to navigate.
Yeah, the skinny shaming, and I know people like harp on people who are like, "Oh, you're skinny shaming," but like, no, it's like a huge thing, and like can keep people in that place too, or keep people in that negative like mindset. Because luckily, I never had anyone like send food to my table, but that's like traumatic.
Oh yeah, I mean, to this day, I'm like, when I think about traumatic moments, I'm like, it's so funny that that's one of them, and I've been through like crazier shit, like real shit. But like that stands out to you because of what that does to emotion. I'm like, that you're in a restaurant and someone is looking at you from across the restaurant and going out of their way to go order something for you. Like, that does not feel crazy. Good, you know? And you think like, how can people, for me, it was just like realizing how many people are so judgmental and creating preconceived stories. And it's like, it's none of your business. Like, I don't even know you. I don't even know you. Why are you saying anything about me? You know? So I just think it's an interesting, you know, lesson in human behavior.
Absolutely. Like, you just don't know what people are going through. And I mean, to those people, they're probably like, oh, she's just skinny by choice, when it's like not the case, really.
Yeah. It's so much more complicated than that, you know, like whether it is choice, you know, like eating disorders in general, you know, if it's anorexia of any type, like, or bulimia or whatever, like, it's so much more complex than that. You know, it's like, there's the choice, but there's something going on. And when you're talking about, you know, when you think about your thought process at that time, I think about things I thought too. And it's like the embarrassing piece instead of, hey, I might die. Yeah. It's like the way your brain isn't working properly. Like, your brain isn't working properly, you know, and everything's distorted and everything feels out of control. And there's such deeper things going on.
Yeah, absolutely. They call it like the ED voice. Like, it's a completely different voice in your head. Yeah. Like, it's not something rational. It's just like, you can't decipher what's like true, what's not true, because it has that ED voice in your head that's like, I can decipher it now, but back then it's like you're not thinking straight. You don't even know.
Here's the thing that's interesting. Like, you know, you and I both, and I want to get back to the modeling piece, but you and I both like went into the health and wellness space. And like, I mean, that I know for both of us, it led for you like a love of cooking and food and like exploring that. And for me, it also, I first started like I was afraid of food because I thought it was making me sick, but that did lead me to loving, you know, like, no, I'm not good at cooking like you are, but like I cooked. I learned how to cook. Like I loved all things health and wellness. Like it bloomed into something beautiful. And in being in that space, I just started to realize all of these people who don't have a healthy relationship with it. Like I remember just thinking like, wow, everybody is orthorexic. And I had seen it that way because I had been through like the sick part of it and gone to therapy and got like, I'd already identified that. And then you see all these people that are promoting health and wellness, and not everybody, but there's so many people where it's like, this is actually very unhealthy, you know? And especially for me with podcasting and like, and being in LA, I just got, and you know, I was like so uncomfortable because it took so much for me to kind of get out of that way of thinking and mind fuck. And then suddenly I'm in this health and wellness space, and so many people are like pretending it's about health. And for them, they're like, you know, you can't go out to dinner with somebody because everything, it's like, what's in that? And I can't have that. And it's like, there's that very fine line, you know?
Absolutely. Because I feel like, again, the eating disorder is an obsession.
Yeah.
And so many people who are obsessed with something go into that for a career or just a passion if you're like doing influencing and stuff like that. And it could be a very fine line from obsession bad to obsession good.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times, I mean, we can decipher it now that we're out of it. It's like a bad obsession. You can tell that they can't like function in life properly because they're so in it.
Yeah. What do you think though, like clicked in your brain of like, because here's the thing, you don't ever think like that anymore. Like I know that about you, and cause I can tell, and I knew that within myself, like I would think I got better and then I would like go back into that way. Like, and I think we're both at a place where it's like, you know, we're around each other enough. I'm like, no, I don't have any friends in my life that are like weird about food.
Yeah.
And you know, I say that like, I mean, I was weird about food, so I'm going to say it that way. Like what was the flip in your mind of actually, cause you're immersed in food now.
Yeah.
Of like never going back there.
Yeah. I think there's a few things, but it definitely was, I started cooking for myself. So because I was orthorexic, I didn't trust anyone to make my food. So during college, I would start cooking for myself, and that became very cathartic for me.
Yeah.
And it filled in the void of volleyball and my depression. And I mean, all my friends were on the volleyball team, so I didn't hang out with my friends as much. I was like very lonely. So cooking started to become super fun. At first it was like, obviously just because I was being crazy and didn't trust anything. But then it started to become access into like my creative side and like be just more filled with joy. So I think finding a passion in cooking helped turn the negative look on food into something positive, because it was a very slow development. Probably like it took years, but eventually it was just like, oh, this is really fun to do. And then even going to culinary school, I feel like that was the final point where I was like, once I was in culinary school, that all my ED thoughts completely went away. Whereas like at the start of culinary school, or maybe right before it, I would have one here and there where you have to like, you know, suppress it or like try to not think about it. Culinary school really took all those away, because I was like eating things I would never eat, and I was like, oh, I'm fine. Like I'm not gaining 500 pounds like I expected to gain from eating one cupcake, or, you know, having like health issues because I was occasionally eating canola oil. So it was probably just immersion therapy, basically just being uncomfortable at first with stuff, and then realizing, oh, the bad things are not going to happen.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because, you know, you're like going through that and you're healing from that, and then you immediately are immersed in, you know, modeling, and you're like traveling all over the world, and you're going to like all these cool things. Also, Kelly's in the Hunger Games, everybody. Fun fact. I literally love your modeling pictures, but like that's a very intense environment, you know. Like what was the dynamic like with you and like other models? Like what were you noticing?
Because again, it was towards the end of my eating disorder, so I wasn't in the worst of it. And I was seeing my roommates, because I lived in a model house, and other friends who had eating disorders. Like almost everyone has an eating disorder in the modeling world, to be like a size 00. And I was like, ooh, that sucks. Their lives suck. And I still wasn't even eating that great, but I was like eating the best out of anyone. And it kind of like instead of putting me deeper into it, which can very much happen in the modeling world, it helped me get out of it, because I was like, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to eat one thing a day and like have a cigarette diet. And it helped me kind of solidify the fact that I didn't want to model for too long. It was always a for fun thing anyway, but I knew I didn't want to be in that world too long, because at that point I was already working on gaining weight and eating healthier and all of that. So definitely it was like a solidifier of, oh, I don't want that to be my life, because again, these girls had eating disorders for years and years and years, and they looked horrible because they were like skin and bone and looked old because, you know, there's no fat in their face. And I was like, I don't want that to be me.
Well, I think, you know, when you see someone else going through a different level or something similar to what you're going through, suddenly it puts it in a new perspective. And like, I know for me, that is seeing that in other people, I was like, wow, like this is a serious thing. Like my health is like very serious, you know, and I think that's another reason why like we need each other, you know, as reflections. And it's like, wow, like I can see myself in you. And, you know, the other like I think about that even for myself. Like when people seeing me at my worst, I think like a lot of people close to me, like it actually kind of benefited of them being like, I don't want to get there. And I'm like, good, you know, like use my suffering and my problems to not go here, you know? So here's the thing. It's like you fear food and then you end up falling in love with it. Isn't that funny how that happens?
It's funny. Yeah.
And you go to culinary school, which, man, I mean, we're not going to get too far into it, but culinary school, listening to Kelly at culinary school was like
crazy.
I was like, it was a reality show. I'm like, every day, I'm like, what happened today?
There should have been cameras in there.
Yes.
It was actually insane.
It was so
like,
crazy.
You think being on teams and being around girls is traumatic? Try being in literally a school of guys, 2 girls in your whole class.
Super competitive chefs.
So competitive. Will like be cutthroat and try to like literally one up everyone. It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was absolutely crazy.
Yeah. And you're the only like paleo chef.
Oh my God, I was made fun of so much because they're like, oh, Kelly's just trying to be healthy, blah, blah, blah. Like I had like a website at that time. I was roasted always for having a website, because all these people going to culinary school, like they just think they just want to be like, you know, own a restaurant and be like cutthroat. And that's like, usually if you're in the food space as a chef, you're only respected if you are head chef at a restaurant and like are in that scene. Like other paths aren't really respected as much. So I always knew I didn't want that. I always knew I wanted to like help others more closely. I had recipes on my website. I was like literally roasted all the time by people in my class for eating healthy, for just being like very different, like weird compared to them. I had like restaurant jobs where one time my restaurant like chef, I don't know how, like found out I had a website and like was posting recipes, roasted me in front of the whole staff of the restaurant. It was this like 40-year-old man. I was like, who the fuck are you?
Wow.
Like, what a loser. I was like, get over yourself. You roasted me for having a website. He was like, oh, you're going to be a blogger. That's so cute.
Yeah. Well, look at me now. Look at me now. Like, yeah, it is cute. I mean, I remember that with myself. You know, everybody made fun of me, and like then, you know, years later, here asked me for business advice, and I'm like, you know what, whatever, and like let that be a lesson for everybody. Like, if people are making fun of you, who cares?
Yeah,
like
you're being different and doing something right. So keep doing it and do what's fun. I was like, I'm having fun. I don't care if y'all all just like want to work in restaurants and be like cool intense chefs with like a bunch of tattoos. I'm like, whatever. I don't. And they're always the guys, you know. The girls were always fine. The girls were always hyping me up, but the guys, God forbid.
Yeah. So Kelly graduated valedictorian.
I did.
Shout out to Kelly.
Thank you.
I want to talk about like the aftermath of that, but I'm curious, you know, looking back, we talked about a number of like very physical things. Like there's your height, there's volleyball, there's the brain injury, there's the eating disorder. It's all very much like this physical thing. You know, when I look at people's journeys and what shapes them, it's interesting because some people it's so internal and emotional and like these inner battles that no one's seeing. For you, it's like it was always very on display. Like it was very on display.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other aspect to it. And I'm curious how you've pieced that together for yourself, or like why do you feel like that, like it was so physical for you? Like why was that a core piece of your journey of it being on display?
I think with me, and you're kind of like this too, you're not going to do something unless like, or like fix something in your life unless your body is like screaming at you. And that was always the case for me. I wasn't going to do anything or change anything unless something drastic physically happened to me and led to where like my mission in life was supposed to be. So like now I can like hindsight look and be like, oh, this was my mission, to be in the food space. But I would never have gone there if I wasn't tall and awkward and playing volleyball and then had that brain injury and then the eating disorder, like all those things physically. If that didn't happen, I wouldn't be where I am today. So, and that's, again, happens with a lot of the things in my life, just because I'm probably like a stubborn person and think my mind is like, I'm going to follow the plan in my mind. I'm like, no, the universe is directing you somewhere else, but you're going to have to go through the shit first and figure it out.
Yeah. It's funny how the universe makes us move, you know? It's usually the physical. So
always.
So you, and I think maybe we'll weave this in of like, you know, so you graduate and then I don't even know what was exactly in your head at the time of like how you wanted to do your business. I don't even know. And let's just also acknowledge, we didn't get overly into it because I feel like you've talked about it so much, but like you had so much aftermath with your body, like with gut issues and, you know, like your thyroid, like you had all these internal things because of, you know, what had gone on. So you also were like, you know, handling that and then also building your business. And so I'm kind of just walk me through like your mental process at that time and kind of what that phase was like.
Yeah. So once I graduated, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do in the food space. I just knew what I didn't like to do. So I knew I didn't like working
Sounds about right.
Working in restaurants. I didn't like working with like people.
I don't like people.
Having a boss.
I like people and I like places. I
don't like working in like a physical space that's like not.
Yeah.
Like, especially like other chefs, I'd be like, they're doing stuff like that's dumb. Like they shouldn't do that. And I was like stubborn. So I knew I didn't like doing that kind of stuff. And I knew I liked, you know, working for myself, helping other people more closely. So that's when I started doing more private chefing stuff. So I can help people either eat healthy or accomplish their goals on a more personal level. Cause I got to, you know, do stuff for them weekly versus in a restaurant, you cook for them once and you're cooking the same meals all day, which is very boring for me. I was always about what did I find fun to do and also align with my passions and mission, which was like eating healthy, helping other people, and just like finding my creativity and love through food versus the other stuff. I knew I didn't like X, Y, and Z. And then the universe kind of just directed me based on opportunities that came my way.
Yeah. So tell me about the like blow up. Like how did it get to, okay, I'm going to get on like TikTok every day, make these videos every day. I mean, I just want everyone to know, like I've told Kelly many times, I have no willpower. I could never do what you do. I literally could never. Like I could never, you know. Yeah. So what inspired you to do that? What was the mindset like, and how did that, because it grew. And it keeps growing, you know?
Yeah. So it basically started when videos became really popular. I'd always been on like Instagram for a while, just doing pictures, but pictures weren't like my passion really. I was like, oh, I'm just doing it to help advertise my business. Yeah. And then once videos like TikTok became a thing, I was like, ooh, this is fun. Like you can watch educational videos about cooking or whatever you wanted really. And so I just started posting educational how to cook videos. And one particular video blew up.
What was it?
It was how to make clarified butter. So random.
Classic.
So random. And it blew.
It's an important life skill.
Yeah, and it's important. And it blew up on TikTok. And I was like, maybe I'll just keep going this route. This seems fun. I was also kind of at a point in my career, I was like kind of getting over like meal prep for people and wasn't like super passionate about it. So that was something that was really exciting to me, help educating people on how to cook. Like I had a very strong culinary background. Obviously I was educated and worked in many restaurants and stuff. So like I had the background that a lot of like creators don't have. So it kind of set me apart in that way. And I'm very good at explaining things and like educating people. So I just started doing more videos like that and they kept blowing up and blowing up and blowing up on TikTok in particular. And then one started blowing up on Instagram and then they started blowing up on every single social media and just kind of kept going from there. And that was in 2022 that started. And I love doing it. And I just really like being able to reach a lot of people and help them become more confident in the kitchen, because I think a lot of creators are obviously great at doing like recipe development or making things aesthetically pretty. I'm really good at helping people like educate and break down the science and the techniques behind stuff so they can become more confident, and that like kind of really like fuels me.
Yeah, well, it's like, I mean, like real life skills, you know, like, and that's the thing about, I think, a lot of the blogging space, and it's all valuable, you know, I mean, but it's like one thing for us to post a pretty recipe, but for people who are like, I want to make a nice dinner for my family, you know, it's like a very different approach. And you help, I mean, you're helping literally millions of people you know, people like, and it's crazy. Without my health struggles, I don't think I would know how to cook. You know, that's really where I was like, I have to learn how to cook. And before that, I mean, I knew how to, you know, toast a bagel, and that was make cereal. That was pretty much it. And I always think about this now, like, especially you know, not that I'm old, but you know, like the older I get, and you meet people, and then even like in the dating world, and you're like, all these people, no one knows how to cook.
It's crazy.
It's crazy how you can be crazy, like 40 years old and not know how to cook.
People are just like, oh, I don't know how to cook. I don't know how to do. When I get it, because like before I had an eating disorder and cooked for myself, I didn't know how to do anything. I knew how to like scramble eggs.
I totally get it.
Yeah. So it's like, unless you have a passion or like desire to do it, or are forced to, like we were kind of forced to, then it's like, how would you know? And there's not like that many places where you could like learn how to do it, especially following recipes. Like they don't like explain how to do it. Like I remember cooking in my college dorm out of a toaster oven, and like everything was horrible because the recipes, like I was like, what does it mean to like broil? I don't know.
I don't know either.
So it's definitely different when you have absolutely no idea where to even start. It's very intimidating to like get in the kitchen.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever. I learn a lot from you, and I also just try and get you to cook for me when I can.
I learn a lot from you for baking. I can't bake for shit.
That was always our flow. I do the baking, Kelly does the cooking.
It's perfect partnership.
Yeah, you know, and sometimes Kelly will just work off her stays with me by being my chef.
So fun.
But okay, can we talk about like in going viral and things blowing up, like that's a huge emotional and energetic change. And, you know, no matter what people think about you, you are very sensitive to energy, and you're very intuitive, and you put on a tough face, but you're very sensitive. Deep down, you're like me.
Cancer at heart, you know?
Yeah. So what has that been like? Like, I know you love what you do, and I know how much you love your community. Like I see all the time, and like how much you love it. And I also see comments people leave. And, you know, for me, I think that's one of the reasons why, like, on social, like, I love platforms like podcasting, but, like, I don't like to push that hard that direction. And I think part of that was because, like, I got my little taste of, you know, like, earlier on when I was going through all my health issues, and, like, got on bigger media platforms that, like, blew up, and I had that onslaught of, like, negative energy. And after that, I really shut down. And so I always like look at these content creators, and I read comments, and I'm like, I don't know if I could do that. Like, I don't know if I could. And like, they're strangers, and it's not like it matters, but like when you feel energy, like it still doesn't feel good to feel that energy, you know, like people are still throwing it that way. And I see what people say, like, you know, you're on your stories just talking about your opinions in your life. It's your page, and people are like, you know, stick to cooking. I don't want to hear your feminist opinions. And don't talk about politics. It's like, well, food is political. But anyway, you know, how have you navigated that, and what has that felt like?
It was definitely weird at first, because when you start blowing up, like all the trolls come out, and I wasn't used to that. So I would read the comments, and they would get to me, and I'd be like really down on myself, or like comparing to other creators and people. But probably after like 6 months to 8 months of this just happening, I just don't read comments that much.
You just don't,
I just don't, or I find them funny half the time now. So people like will send me a mean DM, which I don't even read. I can't even like keep up with the DMs anymore. But like when I could, I kind of just took it as like comical from the most part. Especially because like the people leaving these comments, they don't know me like on a personal level. They follow me for my food. If it's not like they're personally attacking me, because they don't know me. I'm not like super offended, but I did have to change my mindset and like kind of put up a energetic wall where like that would not let that get to me, basically, because a lot of people can easily let that get to them. And I think more so now I have to actively work on not comparing myself to other creators in this space, because we're all on our own journeys. And that's the most struggle for me, is the comparisonitis, and like what I see myself being somewhere and I want to be there already. And I see other people there already, but know that I need to trust the process versus, you know, trolls coming out of the woodwork. Now I just think it's funny.
Yeah.
But it's more so dealing with the comparisonitis. That's the biggest difficulty.
I also think, you know, I think this is another component of things being so physical. Like when I look at the things I've been through in my life and how it was like so on display, like my struggles so on display, it did build thicker skin for me. Like, and so I think that's also a piece when I look at your journey of like, you've been through so many iterations of like people throwing shade, knowing nothing about you, you know, so it's like kind of prepared you for this. But I guess my question would be, what do you wish more people knew about like being a content creator? Like, because I think there's a lot to the behind the scenes of that maybe people don't understand. And I will tell you, just, you know, everybody comes to me and tells me their dreams and goals and things, and I always question, you know, why, and, you know, what do you think that's gonna actually be like? And a lot of people just want, you know, they want to go viral, or they want to be a content creator. And I think like for a certain personality type, it's like, that's amazing, and people are living their dreams. And I think for other personality types, it's like, I think a lot of people don't realize the amount of work that goes into that, you know, like I low-key could never work as hard as you. Like, I'll just say that. Like, I literally don't think I can. You work really hard. But I think, I'm just curious, what are the things that maybe you didn't even know before you kind of got into this, and like now having such a big platform?
Yeah, I don't think people realize how much work, like I said, actually goes into it. And I'm definitely not saying it's like a hard job. It's a hard job, but it's not as hard as like, you know, doing surgery. But it is a lot of work, and your life is kind of on display. So if you can't mentally handle that, then it's definitely like not for you. And you have to have like a strong mental fortitude. You have to have strong scheduling, because I mean, content creation, like, you work for yourself. So I'm very type A, so I'm lucky where I can do that and keep structure in my life. But if you didn't, like, that would be super difficult. Like, I'm working a lot, and I don't plan to work a lot like for the rest of my life. I'm doing it now to build up the foundation, to build up for my mission. But yeah, it's definitely a lot more than you would think that would go into it, especially in the beginning. You don't have the financial means to hire people to help you. Luckily, I have people who help me now a lot more, so that is a blessing. But in the beginning, you have to post every single day, you know, to keep on the algorithm. You have to just pump out content. So it's literally just kind of feeling like a hamster on the wheel, unless you have structure, keep your purpose in mind, like keep your blinders on to compare it to other people, don't read the comments. So it's definitely a lot if you're the kind of person that can't handle that type of thing, or not can't handle, but like not built to do that kind of stuff.
I mean, I think that's a really, I always remind a lot of people in business coaching wise, like with the comparison piece. I used to do that too when I first started, and I would be like, how is this person putting out all this stuff? And I don't know why I just didn't realize, oh, these people have entire teams. And here I am, just me and myself and I, you know, 22 years old. And I'm like getting upset that I can't put out 5 podcasts a week and 20 Instagram posts and 100 blogs. Like, I'm like, you know, people have teams. And it's like, you have to be so organized. And I think that's probably what, you know, it's a skill I don't have. We all know I'm not an organized person. But it's hard. Like, to me, I feel like it's like no days off.
That's what that's what it is. I've done like a lot of things in the food industry, and obviously that's hard, working in restaurants, being a private chef, doing what I do now. I work way more than any of those things. And like, I got rid of like a lot of those things. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have so much time, but it fills up with other stuff you want to do. Cause again, you have to be on all the platforms. You want to be on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. You want to have like your services, building cookbooks. Like, I'm constantly working on other projects while also producing, so my audience and my community can still have valuable like content readily for them, while I'm also doing all those other things too. So I'm definitely never worked more than I do now, but I also haven't had this much passion for something or have a sense of like value in a career as much as I do right now too.
Do you feel like you're living your purpose?
Yes. absolutely. I feel like I'm living my purpose every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
It makes me really happy, you know,
Yeah.
especially like being in the journey
Mm-hmm.
with you. I want to ask you about your spiritual journey.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, you know, maybe we can throw some flavor in here because you've seen behind the scenes of me. And, you know, I don't think, I mean, you definitely weren't into all of this.
Not before.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. What was your journey with that, you know?
Yeah, so with spirituality, I grew up very Christian.
Mm-hmm.
I came from a very Christian household. I grew up in the Southeast, so the Bible Belt. So that's I was like super religious. And then going through college, a very liberal arts school, I became less religious per se. And then moving to California, seeing more like open-minded people, being friends with you. I started seeing more of a spiritual phase of my life versus religious, because it just started to serve me more, and a lot of it had to do with knowing you, because before knowing you, I like didn't know people who are spiritual. I just knew people who were religious, and being able to be friends with you and see how much that enriched your life, and how just like working with the energy and working with your soul purpose and the universe and your higher self and all of that, all the benefits that came from that, I was like, oh, this is cool.
So let me ask you, because I guess I've never really asked. So it's like, when you say it like that, was it the tangible benefits, or was it more like how I was feeling? Like, what was it?
Not the tangible benefits, just more just like how you're living and like how you're feeling. Like, again, I knew you kind of before all the spiritual stuff.
Yeah.
So it was just like a different energy, a different aura, I guess you can say. And I'm like an empath. I can feel energy very well. So I think I recognized that subconsciously, and I was like, that I would like to live in that calm and peace instead of being like stressed all the time. That sounds super nice. Yeah. So I was always very open to it, and just being introduced by you, like from you to it, and living in California, which is a very much more spiritual space, opened my eyes to that kind of living instead of, I mean, in religion, it's very, there's a lot of problems with religion I don't need to dive into, but it always felt like I was operating from a place of fear versus if you're more spiritual, it never feels like fearful. It feels like abundant and loving and peaceful.
Well, I'll just let everybody know, you know, I mean, I think about like you were, you know, one of the first people I gave energy healing sessions to. You were the first person I trance channeled in front of. Literally.
It was wild. And I knew nothing about any of that. And you were like, oh, we were in your apartment, and Cindy just, and you're like, I want to channel in front of you. And I don't think I really knew what channeling was. Like, I knew because you told me about it, but I didn't really know because I wasn't in that space. And I was like, okay. And you like sat down and started channeling, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? I literally was like, it was like she was possessed, and I was like, what is
Don't
this?
let the religious people hear.
I know. In a good way. Religious people, by God.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, how did that feel for you, I guess? Like, how did that feel for you?
That I was doing that? I don't think I had like a ton of feeling around. I think I was just like very much in the sense of like observing.
Yeah.
I didn't feel, and I've always been open to any religion, any spiritual things. So as back then I was like super Christian school still. I'm not so much anymore. And it's not like I came from the sense of like, oh, that was weird.
Yeah.
I came from the sense of, oh, interesting. Like that, I was interested, and obviously I like believed in it because like I was literally seeing it with my eyes, and it was like very much a sense of when you channel, it's a higher being of like love and empathy. So it's not like I felt uncomfortable or anything. It was just like, interesting. What was that?
It's funny. Like, I never really intellectualize this, you know, I never think about it, but it's funny to me as I have made so many changes. You know, you're like one of the few, there's like a handful of people that have really been with me from before to where I'm at now. And, you know, I lost so many relationships ended, got released in that transition. Like people that I was friends with when I was, you know, health and wellness Christina, and then moving into spiritual, there's so many people left. And I released so many people, you know, there's a lot of change, and you're like one of the few that was with me through all of it. And it's funny to me because I always feel so safe with you, and I'll go to you first, and I'm like, why did I do that in front of you first? Like, when I also simultaneously have a number of friends that are like deep into channeling and into all this stuff, and you're always like, you're not. It's funny because I think people might, similar to me, a lot of people like expect me to be judgmental because I'm opinionated, but I'm really like one of the least judgmental people of all time. Like, I have to be. And I'm also opinionated, and you're the same. Like, you're super opinionated, but you're also not judgmental at all. And so it's just funny to me thinking about it, like where I brought you into so many of these firsts with things that were so weird and out there. And instead of going to people that I knew were already like could understand, you're just like, okay, I was just like, come on, Kelly. Like,
and I'm honored always.
We're just doing it.
There's always first still. And I'm like, let's hear it. Let's see it.
Let's do it, and I think that, that was really special for me, of like, for you to be in the journey with me, and like, have your own experience with it, like when you have your sessions and stuff like that. And something I wanted to ask about, it felt like a breakthrough moment for you and me, and I don't even know how old we were. I think you were still in culinary school, and I just moved to San Diego. Do you know where I'm going with this? Yes. And you really needed to cry, and so you asked me to trigger you to cry.
I was like, Christina, I need to cry. I don't think I cried like years at that point.
Yeah, you hadn't cried
in
years. Yeah.
And it was your apartment in San Diego. And I think it took like an hour or two, but we sat down and we just had like a very vulnerable, like heart to heart. It was like a therapy session mixed with like a spiritual session.
Well, do you remember what it came to though?
Yeah, it came down to, at that time I was really struggling with like, if God is a thing, why would he make me go through all of this? Yeah. And I was like, I don't get it. I don't get why I had to go through all this hardship. And in that moment, like, we talked through everything, and I was like sobbing, you were crying, and it just helped me come to the realization, like, I went through all of that to get to where I am today. And like, I knew that logically, but like, I still hadn't accepted that at that point. And it also helped me get into more of like a spiritual space too, because I kept blaming like God or like the universe for whatever. And I was like very bitter about, even though I was like, successful in what I was doing, I was still very bitter for all that trauma. So that like time like really helped me kind of get through that.
I mean, it was I remember that night, it was so intense because like the build up to that question, like I remember like you were like, please trigger me to cry. And I'm going at all these different directions, and I'm realizing this isn't working. And then I go, okay, I'm about to go in with the big guns. Like, it felt like I could feel this thing that you didn't want to talk about. And I don't remember exactly what I said, but we were talking about other stuff, and I come out of the woodwork and I'm like, well, do you believe in God? And you're like, yeah. And at the time, because I remember you were like reading the Bible and like stuff like that. You were like in that space, and it was like something you were anchoring to, as we do, we anchor into like our spiritual connection as we're going through hard times. And I remember being like, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I was like, so why would God do this to you if he loves you? Like, and I remember like just the way that cut, like I just felt like it cut like and that is when you started crying.
Yeah, I think I like started sobbing at that point. I was like, yeah, I don't know,
because it was like the question, I think, that was maybe deep within you that you didn't want to bring to conscious awareness, because then it's like, this is the paradigm, the foundation of how I view the world. And I think it was such a powerful moment for me for so many reasons. And when you look at being in the spirituality space and all of these conversations, religion versus spirituality, we have so much more in common than we do not.
Yeah.
And how a lot of these conversations in spirituality and or religion and the crossover are so triggering for people, or you can expand this out into anything, politics, food, like whatever. They're so triggering for people. But to me, it's like, we have to look at those questions, otherwise we don't really know what we believe in, and I think at the core of a lot of people's trust issues and struggles internally and what they're looking for, and when I look at people's relationship issues, problems with money, like this is it was really powerful for me, because going through that with you and asking that question and realizing that with you, moving forward in my work with clients, I will tell you, to this day, it is something that now I'm able to recognize, and it comes up so often. Like I will, because now I can see it and I'll bring it back to you. And so let's talk about how you feel about God right now.
Yeah.
And that's the thing people don't want to talk about, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we got to
It's
look
a
at
very
that.
conflicting
Yeah.
question.
100%. You know, and like I struggled with that for sure, like growing up, and being like, you know, Catholic and God's looking out for, God loves me, but also like but also you're telling me that if I, you know, make a sin, like I don't make my bed after my parents told me to, I'm going to hell. Like, I don't get it. How is that unconditionally loving? Like I'm actually afraid of this person, you know, like I shouldn't fear somebody who loves me. And it's a really, you know, kind of twisted thing that it can turn into. And so my question for you is, after we brought that up and you're like, yeah, that is a core piece here of like, you know, I'm trying to lean on God for support, but deep down there's a piece of me that blames him.
Yeah.
Like, that's really fucking hard to face, you know? It's like the one thing I can believe in betrayed me. And as you shared earlier, it's like that mirrors all kinds of things, you know, in your life of like, I trusted in you and you betrayed me. I trusted in you and you betrayed me. And then here it is with your relationship with God, with source, with divine. And so like, once you realize that, what was that process like of like healing your relationship with God or source or the universe? Like, walk me through that.
Yeah. So once I realized that and kind of just, you just kind of like brought it up and I knew deep down. I think my relationship with like religion changed to where, again, like you said, all those like rules around religion and like the structures and like why, if like you do all these great things for God, that like all these horrible things still happen to you. That started changing. And that was kind of the moment I started to become more spiritual versus religion, because I realized religion wasn't really serving me in that way, because, you know, all these horrible things happened to me. Why would he let that happen? And really start tapping into, you know, source and the universe instead of being confined in this space that was also like so hateful too. So I think I just needed like that conversation to realize like all this wasn't necessarily serving me, and that doesn't make sense why someone like a God would do that to you, unless, you know, there's, you know, I think now like God is universe and it's all one and all that stuff, and that all of that led me to my higher purpose. And that you have to go through pain to find your purpose. You know, I wrote a book on it.
It did.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to. You know, I think
don't
that's
have to always have to.
But like often we do. You know, often we do, and I think, you know, having the conversation with you brought it up for me too, of course, right? Where it's like, of course, that's a thing of like, how can. But for me, that's the nuanced conversation of like, no one's doing this to me.
Exactly. Yeah. In that time for me, it felt like I was being like attacked by God. And he like was putting me through all this bullshit. And I was like, oh no. And that made me realize like, no, like that's not how it really works.
Yeah. So how do you think it works now?
I believe in a higher being of like the universe and energy and like unconditional love. And I do think like all religions, like all of that leads to, you know, the higher being universe. Like God is the universe, it's energy, it's love, and that everything we are being put through, if we are aligned with love and, you know, our higher selves, that is for a reason. So I do believe in like everything happens for a reason. I do believe in that. If I didn't, I'd be like probably depressed. So I do think everything we go through, as long as we're aligned with, you know, the higher being, the energy and high vibes and all of that, that it's for a reason. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, Kelly and I have manifested some wild shit together.
Literally the craziest stuff. Like when we get together, weird stuff happens.
Weird stuff always happens. Yeah. And we're always so curious what wild shit's going to go down.
Just buckling up, you know, just getting ready.
Just buckling up. Why do you think that happens with us? Like, what do you think it is?
I think it's our energy together. I don't know exactly why. Yeah. I think, you know, we're soulmates on a friend's level. Like we've had lives together. And so when we get together, energy's like, we're sending stuff your way. Like you're meant to like do stuff together and all that stuff. So it's always fun.
Well, I think it's one time we were in Encinitas. We're like, what wild shit's gonna go down today? And this man, are we allowed to say this?
Yeah, I don't think there's not like we did anything illegal.
Stops us on the way to lunch, And that whole day was crazy. Now I'm thinking about it. But, you know, step one, we're going to lunch and this man stops us and he's like, pulls us into this side alley.
It was so sketch.
And he was like, do you guys want to make $300 each? We're like,
I was like, Christina, we need to leave. We're going to get murdered. It's broad daylight. People are walking by. We're unsafe
he's like, look, I'm not weird. He's like, I'll show you my children. My name, you know, he's like showing us. And we're like, what do you want us to do? He's like, I need you to go down the street and buy these special golf club heads.
Like a golf club cover.
A golf club. Oh,
he's like, they won't let me in. I bought too many already.
So long story short, it was this whole dramatic thing and it was hilarious. And we ended up buying them, and we made $300.
Yeah, he was like, I will match it for you and give you $300. We're like, okay.
Yeah. And you know what? I think this is a good like a money manifestation story and also a business building story, because after this, you know, Kelly and I are talking about it. We're like, what do you think he does? Like, he's paying us. He must make a lot of money off reselling these. And then later we ask him, we find out, you know, he's making thousands of dollars. Like, you know, they cost us $175, I think, each. Mm-hmm. And then he's paying us a couple $100 each, but then he's reselling them for thousands of dollars. Yeah. So he's making a big profit. And we're like, he basically just travels around and finds these and does this reselling process. And I'm like, you know, I'm just bringing this up because you know how it is in my community. Everybody's complaining about money, and I'm like, there's 1,050,000 ways to make money.
There's so many ways.
And we were just like, we're like, great, free lunch. You know, we're walking down the street, and I think that's the thing that people don't get. When I'm talking about like vibrating at the frequency of abundance, like random shit comes in, and you just make random money.
You really do.
It's like, and I think one of the things you said that day, we were like laughing about it. Because we were like, should we do it? Like, should we do it? It's going to take an extra 25 minutes. And you're like, yeah, like, we're just in it for the plot. Like,
yeah,
you know,
we gotta do it for the plot.
We gotta do it for the
this
plot.
Is a fun story at this point.
Yeah. And I think I've been thinking about this where I feel like it's that energy that the thing about you and me, because you know you have a different energy with all of your friends, like you and I just do weird shit, you know, like weird shit always happen. We're always like getting into trouble. We're like we're that kind of friend, like
we're just like, let's just have some fun.
Yeah, we're just like
weird.
It's a lot of like fuck around and find out kind of energy, and I'm not like that with a lot of my friends. But I think it was exactly what you said that day. Like, I'm just in it for the plot. Like, both of us are like that, where we hold that energy and then we just manifest more and more experiences where, like, we get pulled into this random shit because we're like, I just want to tell this story. Like, I want to be able to tell this story, you know? And so it's like, for me, I'm like, I think that's part of why we manifest so many.
It happens every time we're together too. Yeah. Every time something happens. Last time we were in Arizona, stuff happened. Like it's always something. It's always funny.
It's always something hilarious.
Yeah.
Which when we were in Arizona, I gave Kelly a past life regression. And how was that?
It was very cool.
We actually haven't really talked about it.
It was very cool. Yeah. So Christina gave me a past life regression. And at first I was like, how's this going to work? And she kind of tapped in. It was like energy healing. And I was like basically in like a hypnotized state, but not really. Like I knew what was happening. And we just went through one of my past lives. Yeah. And it just like came to me and I knew what happened. And it was very interesting.
And here's the thing for people to know, like Kelly's not, I wanted to do it for her because she's skeptical and she thinks she's not intuitive, but she doesn't see, like she's not seeing or hearing. Like, I think that's important for people to hear because they're like, I don't see things like you or hear. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. You still know it, you know? And in that experience, you told me I just knew the answer, you know? But I'm curious because I haven't really even asked you, like, did that from the information you got or even that experience, did anything shift for you, like energetically or
I think things were put into perspective and started like clicking with some aspects of my life. So long story short, of the past life, basically I was murdered. I was a baker in France, and
that's why she hates baking and makes me do it.
Probably hates baking, probably why I have celiac disease, and was like murdered by like a priest, a man. Yeah. And it kind of makes sense with like some of my distrusted male figures and also the whole baking thing. So it definitely just clicked for some things, and I give myself more grace as to why I might feel some type of way if like initial feelings for stuff come up, and give myself more grace around those things.
Yeah. I feel like there was like a peace that entered your field. I felt like through that, like it was like, oh, like this is why I like don't trust.
Yeah. I think also Rick, my boyfriend, was there too. And he's always kind of like, why don't you trust men? Like, why don't you like a lot of men? And I'm like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
why would I? And I think that helped too. Like, oh, I was like literally murdered by a man. I feel like I was also murdered by men in many lives.
Oh yeah.
Because I have nightmares about it all the time.
Yeah.
So
Same.
I think
I mean, a lot of women come in, we come in not trusting men, and we don't really know why. And there's a lot of that past life, you know, all kinds of stuff that happens.
So yeah, it was super interesting. I definitely put things into perspective and like, oh, like that makes sense why I'm like that today. So highly recommend people do past life regressions.
Just like, Kelly's my guinea pig.
I love it.
So where I want to, like, kind of how I want to close this is I want to talk about this concept of multidimensionality. And I'm curious, like, what are the sides of you that you think people don't see?
I think a lot. Well, obviously, especially as a creator, a content creator, people just see me as a chef. And even like acquaintances who don't know me well, like maybe like my boyfriend's friends or like people who meet me out and about, they just like put me into that category. And I'm like, no, I'm like much more than just a chef. I'm someone who's like passionate about health. I'm super passionate about feminism and political rights and all of that, which people, if I talk about that in my stories, go insane over. But it's definitely something that's a huge part of me, like what I do. I'm passionate about helping other people, and just like a lot of things in my life that people don't see. So it's just more, you know, there's a lot of dimension. And obviously sharing my story today, like a lot of people don't know that story about why I do what I do, and that's a huge part of what I do and keeps me going every day. So I think it's important for people to know that kind of stuff.
Well, I have this thought often, like, you know, I see it with you because you're one of my best friends, so I'm like, I don't really look at that much content, but I look at yours, you know. And when people say things as they do, you know, like, stay in your lane, you know, and I'm like, you don't even know what the fuck her lane is. Right? Like, I'm like, that is actually, that is her lane though. Like, and I think that's the thing is everybody's like running around yelling at each other. And it's like, you don't know people's, all the depth of their experience in so many different angles. You know, it's like, especially like when you're talking about politics, for example, or feminism, like you're not talking out your ass. Like you actually like have legit knowledge and experience and like college studies, like in, like in that area.
And I've like barely been through like culinary school. I'm working with in a restaurant industry where it's predominantly male and like you get shit on for being a woman. So like it's firsthand experience that I'm coming from. It's not like, oh, I'm just like this because I like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It's like, no, I like this because I've been through shit and been treated differently because I'm a woman. So that's gonna show in everything that I do because it's, you know, experience, like lived experience.
Do you feel like people have responded positively? Because you share your like your eating disorder story a lot. Like, do you feel like people have responded positively?
Yeah, I think it resonates with a lot of people, especially a lot of people, creators don't talk about that, especially orthorexia. So when I talk about that, anytime I talk about it, people come out and are like, thank you so much. Like this like has helped me, or like I'm thankful that like you're talking about it, because a lot of creators, you know, put in that front that everything's perfect, and I'm definitely not that creator. I'm not like the aesthetically pleasing one. I'm like, I'm the real one that like you're gonna get the real side of me if you dive in deeper past just the food stuff.
100%. Well, you know me very well. What do you think are dimensions of me people don't know about?
Literally so much. I mean, I'm sure I'm sure people see you as like this psychic person who is a higher like energy and all this stuff, which you are, but you also are like a real person that like you can like do normal stuff with. Like I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, she's psychic, like she's not gonna like going out and like going to Disney World together, you know, stuff like that. Like you're just like do like real stuff, and you're super fun. You're one of the smartest people I know. You're one of the funniest people I know too.
Thank you.
And a lot of people probably don't get to see all those sides of you, which is like the fun, really smart, witty, playful side too. And it's so fun.
If they're lucky enough.
Yeah, if they're lucky.
See my wit.
Yeah.
But I think that's, you know, like the purpose of these conversations, you know, you only know people in certain contexts. And I was having this conversation with one of my other friends, Sam. And I was like, you only see me in this context. Like Sam is incredibly philosophical and intellectual and
Very
like,
deep
like
thinker.
very
Love that
deep.
about
And like,
her.
that's, and so when I'm with her, there's that dynamic, you know, we're like talking about like the problems of the universe and like deep spiritual concepts, and like, it's fun and it's juicy and it's deep. And that's a big piece of our dynamic. And when I'm with you, it's like, we can, you know, fuck around and find out, you know, we're like running around doing stuff. And so the thing is, it's like, you know, kind of however the container is set, like you're going to see that part of people, you know, like when I think a lot of people, if somebody meets me, let's say through a session for the first time, they think I'm very serious, right? They think I'm very serious and intellectual. But it's funny because, you know, when I met Andrew, it's like, we talked about this. He's like, literally, like, I would never say you're serious. Like, that was the last word I would ever say to describe you. Like, because when you get to know me in a dating context, it's like fun and flirty and like, you know, playing around and like, him, like, he always says one of the things he's always like most about me is how playful I am and how much of a goofball I am, right? But like, if it's if the setting isn't there, you don't see that side of people. And like, I just think there's so much beautiful healing and like learning and growth when we kind of change those containers a bit and like make an effort to see the other sides of people. You know, that's what I love about people. Like, I want to know the angles that other people don't know. You know, that's what's interesting. And I think, you know, with you, I think that kind of like more emotional, vulnerable side is like actually one of my favorite parts about you. And like, you're so introspective, and I find often some of the most introspective people are like, can seem like they're not like you're quiet, but like can seem the quietest because they're so in their internal world, like moving it around and alchemizing it and figuring it out. And like, it's such an intense process, and I have to kind of like with you, like get in there and ask a question, like, like pull it out of you. And I think sometimes you just don't want to talk about it, but more it's like you're just not used to talking about it because you're processing it
100%.
within yourself.
Yeah, I'm very internal about that.
Yeah. And I think that's like one of the other, like, I hear you when it's like, yeah, you're not just a chef, you know, you're all of these things and you have this whole range of experience. And you're, you know, people, Andrew's always like, Kelly's one of the coolest people I've ever met. Like, you know, she has like, she's been all over the world. She's modeling. She was doing volleyball. Like she's a professional chef. Like, you do all kinds of cool things, but it's not just about all those roles you play. It's about like all of the emotions you felt too, you know, and like all the things that you've been through. And like, I think for you, there's been so much like, and we talked about like validation about, hey, I'm a good chef. Hey, I'm a good volleyball player. Like, hey, I'm smart. But it says a lot about you that like we've been able to be friends this long.
I mean, you too. Yeah.
I'm wild, right?
Literally.
It says a lot about you. And I think the piece that I want everyone to like know about you is that you're such a safe space, and like you're such a loving friend. Like, you know, and like you were actually you're just so sweet. Like,
which is so funny because like no one ever says that about me, because like I'd have a tough bitch exterior.
Yeah, I know.
But deep down, I absolutely, especially with my friends, if you get to be close to me, like I'll be that person that you can talk to anything about. You know?
100%. And like there's that. I think the thing that I love about, we're both the kind of person like we're loyal to a fault, and that's one of the things that's been hardest for me in friendships, especially female relationships. Like, loyalty is everything, and people like switch sides overnight. Like, it's all, and that's really hard for me to find. You're one of the only people I've ever met that's like, I feel like is actually as loyal as me. Like, would
likewise,
like step in front, like go at someone.
Literally,
yeah,
I will.
You know, and people can perceive that as like I said, like tough bitch energy, but that is actually really coming from like pure love. Like, absolutely, I love someone so much, like I would do anything for them, you know. And so I just want to reflect that back and like share that with the rest of the world, you know, because I think especially the bigger your platform gets, it can be easier and easier for people to put you in a box.
Oh yeah,
you know,
100%.
And especially like, you know, you mostly do a lot of short form and all that, and like people are looking for real people, you know, like and I think that's one of the reasons why so many people connect with you, like because you're just fully yourself and you talk about all of those things, you know.
Thank you.
I'm very grateful for our friendship.
I'm very
always.
grateful. We have the best times.
We have the best times, and it's so cool that here we are having this conversation.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I love it. So I want to hear, what's coming up next for you. What are you excited about, and what's going on?
Well, I'm having fun things in my business. So I made a complete kind of change to fully content creation and just helping value and like serve my community. And I'm starting a membership soon where I'm doing online Zoom cooking classes once a month. So if you ever wanted to learn how to cook more and do fun stuff like that, but not have to go to a $300 class at Sur La Table, check that out. It's going to be really fun. But yeah, just working more closely with people, helping people feel more confident, have fun in the kitchen is always my goal. So that's the next step in my business I'm super excited about. And then just keep doing stuff like that. I'm doing more long form YouTubes now to try to, I feel like short forms, you can only do so much.
Yeah.
And so just, again, help more people.
Love that.
Yeah.
That's all. I also feel like that's such a fun thing to do with friends. Like if you do the monthly, like all get together and like learn together, So I love that. Kelly also has a book. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So I have a book. It's called The Basics of Cooking. I self-published about a year and a half ago. And it's more than a book. It's kind of more like a workbook / crash course in the fundamentals of cooking. So it's really educational. It teaches you versus recipes. It has recipes, of course, but it's more of like this. If you read this book, you're going to know how to cook.
Yeah.
And you can reference it like you would the Bible, basically. It's like the cooking Bible, the basics.
Yeah.
And all of it also has references to video content, long form video content that you get to kind of work through the book with. So it's really fun.
Yeah.
And it's good for anyone really, not just like a very beginners. It's teaches more in-depth stuff too. So if you just like cooking, like this is something that you would probably value.
Yeah. Well, and we didn't even talk about it. I'll probably talk about it some other time, but it's like, it's funny how we got led to food, and now food, I'm like cooking, food, eating together. It's such a spiritual experience. It's such an important part of culture and coming together and love and health. I think both of us came into it like macros and ingredients and like, yes, that's like ingredients are important, but there's like the energy that goes into it. And there's a reason why, like when you cook something for me, I'm going to digest it like way better than if somebody else, because it's like,
it's made with love.
Yeah.
That's
the
what
love,
it comes down to.
And for me, that's been a really big part of like my spiritual connection too, know? So
food is super spiritual.
It's life force energy, you know?
Yeah.
It's life force energy. So we'll put links for all that in the show notes so people can learn about that and where all the places they can connect with you. Just
amazing. Yeah.
Kelly's Clean Kitchen everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think that'll wrap us up for today. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always an honor.